Welcome to the Intern Whisperer, the show all about the future of work. Today's guest is Nick Rodriguez, the host of the Nick Rodriguez podcast. Welcome, Nick. How are you?
I'm good, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
So just so you know, and then also our listeners, our show is all about business, the future of industries, and jobs. So starting off, you are a graduate from the College of Charleston
Yes.
with a bachelor's degree in communication. Did you set out to have a degree in communication, or did that just happen?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So I actually went to school to pursue education. My dad's a teacher, and I have a lot of teachers in my family. And then somewhere along the way, I guess sophomore year, junior year, a friend of mine was talking about this student news organization called System Yard News at the College of Charleston, where students write and do video and all this sort of stuff. So I applied and I got the job. It pays a little bit, but it was just a lot of fun to get in that space. And then after a while, I kind of decided it's not like I was disliking my education courses, but I just kind of really fell in love with the communication and being a writer and everything like that. So no, I didn't initially decide to go in with communication, but it's kind of funny how that ended up switching for me.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned education, Nick,
Yes.
and that really intrigues me because I was a public classroom teacher and then I moved over into teaching as an adjunct professor when I
Okay.
also started my own business. So what would you have taught if you were an education person? Like what grade, or was there a subject?
Yeah, so it would have been elementary education. So that would, and if I had to pick a grade, it'd be fifth grade. I did a lot of summer camps, while in college. So I liked working with kids, and I felt comfortable doing that. And then I think age 10 to 12 was like my favorite age to, be their counselor or teacher or something like that. But if I had to pick a subject, I know usually in elementary you kind of do a general, teaching of everything. But if I had to choose a subject, I would choose history. I've always been a big fan of history. But yeah, I was really set on it. I was taking education courses, and that was the plan. And like I said, things changed a little bit along the way.
And what do your parents teach? Or was it just one parent or both parents?
Just my dad. My dad teaches music at a middle school, so I don't think I could start out with middle school. That's very bold. But I think I would start out with either elementary school or high school probably.
Yeah, interesting. Did you play an instrument also?
I did. In middle school, I played the trumpet, and then one day I got braces, and if it, when you first get them, it hurts to play the trumpet, and then
Yeah.
unfortunately, I just didn't get back into the routine, and I just ended up stopped playing. But but my sister plays a few instruments. I think she plays the clarinet every once in a while and the piano, and but yeah, it's just it's pretty funny.
Nice, nice. Okay, Ian.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like if I have no interest in education, but I feel like fifth grade would be a great year to teach, just
Yeah,
because they're not in the moody middle school yet,
right.
and they're mature enough for to have a conversation with them.
Exactly, exactly.
Because I used to volunteer at a summer camp as well for like about 2 years,
Oh,
and
cool.
fourth and fifth grade were always the ones that I could connect with instead of just them messing around.
I totally disagree with you guys
Oh,
about fifth grade, and this is why. That
Okay.
is when puberty starts setting in, and yes, they are moody. They are moody as all get out. Girls are, getting a cycle. Guys are getting body hair, and they cannot stop touching each other because they're beginning to be aware of each other as an opposite sex. I taught seventh grade, and oh my goodness, it was like I'd go home exhausted because it was just like, stop touching that person. Don't touch their desk. Leave it alone. And yeah, so I felt it was very challenging for sure.
yeah, that is also true. And I don't know how you did seventh grade. I know I was pretty terrible in seventh grade. But so you started with education. You went to communication. What was the leap for Oh, I want to start a podcast.
Yeah, so one of the first jobs that I had after I graduated from the College of Charleston was at the Pro Business Channel. And they do a lot of podcast work, either helping people start their own podcast or having guests on the Pro Business Channel, also based in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm from. So I worked there as an internship, and I grew a relationship, with a friend of mine. His name is Rich Casanova, and we've done a lot of work together. The Podcast World Tour, the Podcasters Directory, and then one day last year, actually, he said that I should start my own podcast and use my own name to, brand myself and, call it the Nick Rodriguez Podcast. And I thought it was a great idea. I knew I wanted to be about sports, but I had to figure out where exactly in sports that I wanted to be about. I didn't want it to be a daily recap show, and there's, nothing wrong with those types of shows by any means. But for me, I wanted to be a little bit different, have a little bit more impact, and it's worked out very well. We're approaching 1 year for the show, which would be November 29th when I released my first episode. But it's already been over a year by a day or so, a few days or so, when I first launched the idea and started planning for it. But yeah, it's been an exciting and very cool experience so far.
I wanted to go back to the whole sports thing. So what sports did you play when you were in high school? Because, that I think that plays into a lot of what your interests are, because
Right.
it had to be around that.
Yeah, definitely. So growing up, I played everything with friends: football, basketball, baseball. But baseball was primarily my sport. Played that for 2 years in high school. And funny enough, after I stopped playing my sophomore year, I just stopped following it for a couple of years, just because you play it for so long. But once I got into college, I fell back in love with baseball and other sports, and that's when the Cistern Yard thing started to happen, and eventually where I started my own podcast.
So is this your day job, or do you have a day job and you podcast?
I have a day job, and I podcast on the side as well. Yes.
Do you have a sponsor yet? I'm always curious about how people get sponsors.
No, but that is something that I'm, working to build towards. That's always something that I think is an exciting opportunity. I think for me and my show, that's something that I will, aggressively go after in years 2 and 3. But yeah, I'm always open for an opportunity like that for sure.
We use Podbean as our distribution channel. I don't know what your hosting site is. What do you use? Podbean or somewhere else?
I use Captivate. I've been
Okay.
using them for a couple of months, and it's been great. It's been you don't want to change your host a lot from what I've been told, but Captivate's been great. The great analytics and everything like that. So yeah, I've been using Captivate for I think since June or so.
And one of the things that I also have enjoyed about, I'm sure all of the services are really good. It's just a matter of like, what did you pick and what was I guess the selling point. One of the things that I liked about Podbean is they have a lot of webinars. They have a lot of really great webinars about how to monetize your podcast and, how to find a sponsor and all of that. Does that service that you use do the same thing?
They do. They do. I think it's something where if you need it, it's there. And, when I first signed up, they were, had a lot of questions and stuff for me so I could answer and anything like that. So, yeah, very helpful in anything that I can need. And I feel like if I were to reach out to them for a problem or advice or, how to grow my podcast, I think they'd be able to respond very quickly.
All right, Nick. I'm going to let you go back to Ian. And Ian, what was the sport other than baseball? I think I'd like to hear some baseball chatter here between you guys.
So first off, who's your team? You're from Atlanta, so the Braves?
Braves, but
Yeah.
admittedly, growing up, I was actually a Yankees fan.
Yes, there we go.
I don't want to get you too excited.
Oh no.
I'm not a Yankees fan anymore. I just want to get
Oh,
that on record, on tape. But no, Derek Jeter was my favorite player. He's like I think I read somewhere one time where his first year was like the year I was born or something like that, or 2 years later. Like, so I grew up with Derek Jeter, loved Derek Jeter, and of course they
Mhm.
were winning, so that made it so much easier. But since I'm a Braves fan, but I get a sense that you're a Yankees fan.
You know, just a little bit.
Okay, okay, okay.
So you were born in 96?
95. So I guess
95?
I could have the year wrong, but it was around that time.
Yo, yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm thinking 95 or 96. He may have played a few games in 95, but it was
Right.
definitely around that time.
Definitely. Right.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah, I feel like I was a Yankees fan up until Jeter left until in 2014.
Yeah, I was
And
tough.
then, yeah, it was tough to see him leave and to see like
Yeah.
all of the people of the core four leave. If you know, yeah, if you know who the core four are.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then I wasn't into baseball from like 2014 until like last year, and I'm trying to get back into it. And they're a good team now, but right now they're on like a 4 game losing streak, so I'm not really too sure
Wow.
what's going on.
I didn't know it's been 4 games.
Yeah,
In Atlanta, there's their own demons when it comes to the postseason and
yeah,
everything like that. So, um, yeah, I think I always say like when you have the classic teams in your main sports doing well, I think it's just better for the sport.
yeah,
I consider the Braves a classic team, but like the Yankees or the Red Sox, those classic teams are doing well, and then you have one or two teams sprinkled in that are, you know, not a powerhouse,
yeah,
sexy team like the Twins or something like that. I think that's what you want every year, but obviously that's not the way. That's not the way it works.
yeah, for sure. When the Nats won last year, that was big. Like they had never won as that franchise before, so
Hmm.
that was great. And then, oh man, I just forgot what you said. Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Are the Braves in first place right now?
They're in first place. They're in
Okay.
first place. Starting pitching is a little shaky, but
Yeah.
it's okay. I think they'll make the postseason, and this year, there's more teams. I think it's like every division has the first and second place team makes
Yeah.
it, and then there's still I think another wild card team or two that makes it.
Yeah.
So I think it's like 16 teams, which is more than half the league.
Yeah.
So I'm confident this year the Braves can break their streak of not winning in the postseason because they'll play a more inferior team, maybe the Marlins or something like that, and just get over the hump and then move
That's
forward.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of rooting for the Marlins though. If I had to choose a Florida team, there's some bad blood between the Rays and Yankees right now, so I'm
Yeah.
not much
Yeah.
of a
Exactly.
yeah. So if I had to choose a Florida team, I would go with the Marlins for like just rooting for them. But I'm pretty sure they're not going to make it that far.
Probably not.
Probably not.
I don't know. I don't know. I've heard somewhere or saw somewhere that pretty much every team is in the national league is in it, which I guess is exciting just because there are so many spots, except for I think the Pirates. I think the Pirates are just kind of
They
not
are
close, but everyone else
no,
is
not
kind
at
of
all.
vying for a spot, which that part makes it kind of exciting, I guess.
Yeah, gotcha. We're done with the baseball talk, Isabella.
Oh, gotcha. Well, you humored me for a little bit there. That's kind of you. So I want to go back to the fact that your major was communications, right? That's what
Yes.
you graduated with. So how do you, I mean, obviously there's a connection between podcasting, but what else are you taking from that degree into what you're doing now? And does your day job include the communications? I mean, are you blending what what you get paid to do in your job with what you're doing here on podcasting? How's that working for you?
Yeah, so I think for me, communications was a perfect fit because I learned a lot of essential skills that could be used at any position. Public speaking, learning how to write an email, communications, learning how to communicate with people, and learning how to write an email. I've learned more and more is very important, in the business world, with coworkers, with anybody, even if you're just looking for a reference, it's important, to portray yourself in the right way. And I had great professors at the College of Charleston, so absolutely, I think it's been a great fit, and it's really helped me along with my career. And as far as my current position, absolutely. And I think again, like it's just it's one of those degrees that you get that it can be so useful in just about anything. I could still get into teaching, I would need to get a certificate and anything like that. But the skills that I learned are very important. Public speaking, like I mentioned, and being able to express your thoughts and debate and everything like that is extremely useful.
I totally agree. I have had a lot of students that are in communications come in and they think that just one path is typically social content creation. And I think that's because that's how most businesses are getting their message out there.
Right.
That's obviously the biggest role that somebody can fulfill. But you raised some interesting points. Public speaking, that leads right into podcasting, right?
Right.
And then
Yeah.
the ability to, you said something significant, email. And that was a conversation I had said earlier to everybody that's on the team here, saying, okay, so remember to check your email 3 times a day, because mostly, you know, people don't think about that when you're in school, but the business world does use email. And it's going to be really important to develop that as a habit and not be surprised about that later,
Right.
so to speak, and go, oh, yeah, that's right, I'm supposed to. Yeah. And to be able to write an email that sounds intelligent is, and I don't mean like smart, I just mean like, business professional.
Right.
You know
Right.
how
You're
to
not
write.
Right. You're not sending a text message. And
Yeah.
obviously, it depends on who you're emailing. If it's someone that you're more friends with, you don't have to be as neat and proper. But if you're emailing someone about a potential job, you want to make sure your words are spelled correctly. Commas are in the right spot. Especially, I mean, one thing that you always hear about is spelling the person that you're addressing's name correctly.
Yeah.
That's a big one. I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be in their actual email or in the job listing or wherever it may be. So even if it's a tricky name, I think it's just good to double check. And I've made those mistakes before. I'm not here to say I've never made those mistakes, but it's super important, and it's overlooked too.
I agree. I agree. Okay, so little test. Let's just do a quiz here real quick. Conversate, real word, or a slang word?
Conversate is a real word or slang word? Ooh,
Is it? Which one is it? What's your vote?
I'm gonna say slang.
I
Ian?
also agree. Yeah, slang.
It is slang. You are absolutely right. People use that word, and I was an English major, and I go, it is like all I can do to bite my tongue and go, that is not a real word. Stop saying it.
I'm guilty of that as well. I've definitely used conversate before.
Yeah, but you answered the question right, so
That's all
good
that
for
matters.
you.
That's all that
That
matters.
is what matters. But I think that what you are saying is true, because it's also like, who is your audience and how should you speak with them?
Right. Exactly.
I listened to, Ian had recommended a show. I think it was Ian. No, I think it was one of our other guests. No, it was Ian. Jeff Goldberg, right? No, Goldsmith.
Jeff Goldblum.
Bloom, yeah, Jeff
Yeah.
Goldblum. I
Yeah.
went and I listened to all of those shows. Those were amazing. Now, Nick has no idea what we're talking about. Why don't you go ahead and educate? Because it was all about shoes. And I heard somebody on that show say conversate, and I went, oh my God, they just said that word. But it's a really good show. I don't know if it's a podcast, but it's definitely a show on Netflix.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus, and it's
Disney
like a
Plus.
documentary episode. Have you seen it, Nick?
I have not. No, I have not.
No. And then I guess to tie it in, this is just like off book. So if you're into sports and all that, are you also into shoes as well?
I can appreciate shoes,
Yeah.
but I'm not gonna drop a lot of money on LeBrons or anything like that. But I can appreciate the hobby and the craft and everything like that.
Yeah, I agree. Like I wouldn't go out of my way. Like I only wear Converse basically.
Converse is a cool shoe. Those are
Yeah.
cool.
But I was just tying that together since we were talking about the Jeff Goldblum episode about shoes, and then
Yeah.
shoes definitely go well with sports, especially like basketball.
Oh yeah. There's I mean, people buy tons of shoes. Like there's like in the NBA, there's a player named PJ Tucker who has they're all staying in their own hotel rooms. I think he has a whole either closet or hotel room just of his shoes. So he's like a big shoe guy. So yeah, definitely NBA, definitely big shoe people. But yeah, never been my big cup of tea. But I can appreciate the craft for sure.
I want to say, Ian, thanks for the connection, because that is honestly what I was going to go to, was the fact that it was sports and it was the shoes. And I went, oh my God, that whole episode, I had no idea what big business sports athletic shoes are all about. It was crazy, the
Yeah.
amount of money that went through there.
Oh, it's a ton. It's a ton.
Yeah, just sports in general. So the sport that I did when I was in high school was swimming. And I'm kind of interested to hear what you talk about on your show, because I haven't listened to it yet. I'm going to. And I wanted to know more about the sports. Do you do like one around the Olympics when, well, we would have had Olympics this year, but
I know. Yeah.
yeah, that's a bummer too. I think they still should have done them and just let, pay-per-view. I think people would have paid for that for real. They would have spent the money to go there. They would have paid. Anyway, I was just really interested in the different types of sports that you bring in on the shows, because gymnastics was one that I always liked a lot. And then I was a swimmer when I was in high school. And then the other thing was, I don't know, did you guys have wrestling teams in your schools?
We did. Or, yeah, I did.
So
Yeah.
I was a wrestlerette. Do you know what that is?
I do not know.
So when I was in high school, every one of the teams would have their own kind of a cheer squad, so to speak. So we weren't cheerleaders, but we were there to support. So I learned a lot about wrestling just because I had applied for that. And I learned, we would cut the oranges up for the guys, but we kept score. We helped promote it. We were selling tickets, and, it was a really big deal. In high school, it's a big deal.
Right.
But it was very interesting because I did not know anything about wrestling. I was always thinking it's like Hulk Hogan kind of stuff, and it was not. It was like, this is a real sport, and it made me see the connection of how it actually went to the Olympics too.
Yeah, yeah. Wrestling is very interesting. I don't know a lot about wrestling itself. It's not a sport that I, usually focus on all that much as far as like a viewer. My main sports that I watch are, baseball, basketball, and football. And for the show, really, I mean, it's less about the actual sport and more about the person performing. So we've had probably mostly football and basketball athletes on the show, but we've also had people from administration. One of my friends, Jamal Walton, was on the show, and he's not a current athlete anymore. He's more in the athletics department. So for me, I'm trying to set an example for kids who are either my age, in their early to mid 20s, or in high school or in college, to see all the examples of how all these people who are really successful, how they got to this point. So we have people in media also come on the show and talk about their career and how they got to a certain spot, and it's meant to help people kind of determine where they can go.
What about swimming and gymnastics though? Do you cover what type of, other than just baseball, basketball, and what was the other one? Soccer? No, you didn't say soccer.
I haven't. No, I didn't say soccer, but I mean, we're not. I mean, if we had the opportunity to have someone from gymnastics or swimming or soccer or anything like that, more than welcome to have that conversation. For me, I just want to make sure that person's a leader, in their community, doing the right things on and off the field. Is a role model. Those are the kind of characteristics that we're looking for when it comes to a guest on our show.
Got it.
And how has it been with the pandemic going on?
That's an interesting question. So for the first couple of months, I was at a, recording studio. And then, I think at some point, I don't know if I'm there yet or not, but I've recorded more episodes at my in-home studio than I did, before. So it's just interesting. I think it's just being able to adapt. And I think in some ways, it's been easier because some people were more available at more times than they might have been had the pandemic not existed. But of course, you have your Wi-Fi issues that come and go, or things like that. But it's been a good experience, and I feel like the guests that I'm able to bring on have been great, and it's been a great experience.
And since you're limited to, doing things through Zoom, have you like branched out to, places that you never would have before?
Yeah, I think so. I think it lends you that opportunity, just because you can be a little bit more creative. Recently, we started the Nick Rodriguez podcast roundtable, where we use more of the Zoom features, where I get three other people in the sports community, and they come on and we talk about things going on that's important to them, like voting and finding a job, during the coronavirus, everything like that. So we just recorded our second episode, and it'll be a monthly thing that comes out every third Wednesday. But I think absolutely, I think in a time like this, I think it's best to use your network as much as you can and try to be creative as possible.
So you have the round table and then you have a separate podcast. You have two?
It's all this. It's all the same. So my podcast, like the regular shows that come out, are released every other week, and then the roundtable is still with the Nick Rodriguez podcast. It's just a monthly segment that we do. That's every third Wednesday, and it's more of a group of people, and we talk less about the individuals' careers, but more about topical issues that are going on in our world.
That's good. So it's like The View, but with men.
And we actually have men and women come on the show. I like to have a diverse group. So, other than myself, I have another, man in there, and then we have two women, various backgrounds, and, just so they can speak to, their experience and everything.
That's really nice. I'm glad to hear that. One of my friends is Ashley Hart, and she has an app that promotes, it's called She Plays. I'm going to recommend, she has her own podcast too, and she's in that sports arena.
Okay.
But you guys could potentially have each other as guests. Her app is about fantasy sports and, women in fantasy sports. So you might find that really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So look her up. It's She Plays, and she's also been a guest on our show. It was at the beginning of the year, I think. It was a while back. It seems like so long ago.
Yeah.
But everything about COVID, from mid-March, it's just one big blur. I don't know about anyone else, but it feels that way for me.
No, definitely. January definitely feels like 2 or 3 years ago.
I know, right?
So, definitely been a long year for sure.
Yeah, and we're still in September, but it's going to fly by. And I know that 2021 is going to be the year for all of us, because we should be moving forward out of this COVID life.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to go back to this, and I think you raised you saw it as an opportunity. Ian had said, the thing about doing the podcast remotely, did it limit, your ability? And actually, I see it as the same, and I think Ian does too, honestly. See it as an opportunity to expand and to go into places where you're going, gee, I don't have people that are right next door to me and sit in the chair with me, so how do I do this? And now everybody is doing it this way.
A lot of people are. And actually, I just started using Zoom for recording podcasts. Most of my recording at home was through Squadcast. And they do have a feature where you can turn on, the camera and, see each other like you're in the same room. But it doesn't record any of the video. It's just there for, visual purposes, so you can see, the natural reactions and everything like that. But just started using Zoom for the roundtable segment that, I started last month, back in August. But yeah, it's been a good experience. But I know a lot of podcasters, friends included, that just started that are using primarily Zoom, and it's been such a great tool because you can take the audio if you just want the audio, but you can take video, of course, too, and grow your YouTube channel.
You were at Podfest, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yep, and that's how we met. I was one of the speakers, and I was overwhelmed with how many people attended. What were your thoughts about Podfest?
Yeah, it was an amazing experience, and it feels like such a long time ago. I mean, that was this year.
It was just last month. just last month.
Oh, you're talking about the one, the virtual event with the
Yeah,
virtual.
in August.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, that one was cool too. Also a cool experience. I mean, I think for me, they're so different. The one in March was, there's a lot of people there. The coronavirus existed, but it wasn't as prevalent in the United States. And then, we fast forward in August, another cool event, virtual event.
The summit, yeah, and I was saying Podfest, but
Yeah,
they
it's
were
the same. It's the
interchangeable
same.
terms for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it was. I felt equally as excited to speak and to engage with people. I think people were really looking to engage, and Chris always does a phenomenal job. So, both were great experiences.
So good. Have you, I don't know about you, but there's no way I have had the ability to go back and listen to all of those speakers. And I think that there was 250 speakers. Could you, I mean, there was just so much great knowledge that was there. And I think I went to about 8 of them just because of time constraints.
Right.
I would just so love to go to all of them. Do you know how long those links are up? I'm not sure. Chris is going to be a guest on our show coming up,
Oh, great.
but yeah. But I'm not sure how long they're active, and just throwing it out there in case you have that knowledge.
I think if you spoke at the summit, I think you have access to those, like forever, basically. I think they're basically yours. I believe that's my understanding. If you were an attendee, but it was free, then you wouldn't have access. You would only have access basically like as it was happening. And then, of course, there were the, attendees who did pay, and they would also have a similar package to us. That's to my understanding, but
But I think those videos had to be downloaded, and I did not download them. So I don't know if he had them on Facebook. I think that they're all on Facebook, maybe,
okay,
this group.
okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was throwing it out there.
Well, Chris would know a lot better than me, so I'm sure once you have him on the show, you can really get the
I
right
will.
answer.
I'm going to ask him that question again because I bet if I went through the emails, I'd find it. But that was just a side conversation there.
Yeah.
What was your best or your most favorite podcast presentation that you listened to? Did you have one that stands out?
I think the whole sports podcon event was really special. I mean, that's where I ended up speaking also, but I think hearing everybody else speak and their expertise, and I think for me, being a sports podcaster, it might not sound very unique. A lot of people who do podcasts start sports podcasts, but I mean, it was just cool to hear John speak. John is always does a great job, and I think everybody that spoke did an awesome job. So I would say sports podcon.
Nice.
Sorry for the silence there. Yeah.
It's
So,
recorded. It's okay.
so besides your podcast and talking about sports, what else are you passionate about, and what other goals do you have in your career? And it's gonna be a long time. You're so young.
Yeah. I think for me that's ever changing. I think it's always something that I want to keep in mind and have something that's going and going and going. So I want to put myself in a leadership position and be able to speak at more events and grow my brand, grow my platform, and I guess when it comes down to it, be a role model for people, and be like, wow, he did things the right way. Is he perfect? No, of course not. But he's trying and he's doing things like he's making an effort to do the right thing. So I think that's the kind of the bottom line premise. Obviously I have big plans for the podcast. I think it's going to be very successful. But thank you for calling me young. That's very nice. But I think because of that, you have the opportunity to have things change, and I think a lot of times people are afraid to kind of go after certain things because they're worried something will happen. I saw something a friend of mine posted and said, they don't want to go to like medical school because in 4 years they'll be 32. And they said, well, in 4 years you're still going to be 32. So you either, regardless, you're going to be 32 in 4 years, right? So it's what you do in those 4 years. You don't have to go to school, but I just thought that was a funny little anecdote.
And I'm not sure why exactly. I mean, you're older than me, of course. But not by much. I was born in '99.
Okay.
Which
Yeah.
yeah, which is also a year the Yankees won. Your year was also a winning year, so we're
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty good years.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
um, but yeah, that's awesome. So what's the next step with the podcast? Like, what's a year from now?
Year from now, man, that's honestly it's hard to answer. I think, which is good in some ways. I think I have a vision for what I want it to be like, tomorrow, in 6 months, and in a year. I do have those little visions. I just announced a couple of weeks ago that we're gonna have a Listener of the Year award, which is pretty exciting. Where they'll get Nick Rodriguez podcast T-shirt, and they'll get to actually appear as a guest on the show. So building up the brand and everything like that. So in a year, I see the listenership and subscribers take a nice spike up, even higher than it is now, and then just getting more and more quality guests, and just still really enjoying being a podcast host.
Our show is all about internships and remembering someone that gave us a chance. So, Nick, were you ever an intern? I'm going to skip around in our question presentation.
Yes, of course. I was an intern. That first position that I mentioned before at the Pro Business Channel is where I was an intern. For about a month or so, and then I, was lucky enough to get the opportunity at Georgia Tech, where I was actually also an intern. There, I was a paid intern. The first one was more for the experience and hands-on opportunities. With at a smaller company. So yes, to answer your question, I've been an intern a few times.
Yep. And what were you doing? What was your role in those companies?
Yeah, so with the Pro Business Channel, I was helping book guests, sending emails out to have people on the show, and I did a lot of audio engineering, which for me, at the time I had listened to a lot of podcasts and was a big fan, but didn't know much about the audio engineering side of it, which was pretty cool. You're listening, and my friend now, Rich, would sometimes have me ask questions to be engaged on the show and everything like that. So it was a good experience for me because I was interacting with people who were business leaders and were very successful. And I had just graduated college, so it was good to have those conversations. At Georgia Tech, it was a little bit different. It was a much faster speed. I was a paid intern, and I was on the communications staff for Georgia Tech athletics. So I would help write press releases and do a lot of social media and work with coaches and athletes on games and getting things out the right way and everything like that. And I was a completely different learning experience, but I think with my degree in communications, it really helped kind of speed that process along.
So learning press releases, I think that's really a valuable skill, especially on the
Yeah.
communication side, because I did not realize this until I had some students working with me. Said, so do you know how to write a press release? And they said, well, we've learned it, but they've never done it. And so that's one of the things that if they ask or they have interest, I have them learn how to do it when we release press releases. So our press releases will be on our game and on our software product and some of our key partnerships. And, I let each one of them have a turn at creating that press release. The same applies. It's kind of surprising. Everybody learns, I'm pretty sure you did this too, a PR campaign. But they don't know how to implement it. So you do something that's a case study and you have no idea if it can go or not. And so that's another thing that people have done as an intern with me, with my company, is creating, a PR campaign, and then we create the content around it, being able to, do the promotion of it, and then look at those weekly reports. That's part of the whole process all the way across. I would hope that whether it was unpaid or paid, they were both quality in that sense, that if it was unpaid, you were getting to do a press release or create a PR campaign. But you mentioned you were only there for a month or a month and a half. So I guess the paid one stole you away from whatever the other opportunity was.
Yeah, it's funny. That's exactly what happened. Where I was, offered the position, at Georgia Tech as communication / PR assistant. And so, Rich is my, my friend today, but it was kind of fun. We had a great working relationship, obviously still do. I help him on a lot of projects to this day. But yeah, I mean, obviously, most times you're going to go with the one that, that pays. And I was at Georgia Tech from November of that year till June, but still helped out Rich with any other projects that he asked me to help out with.
Yeah, and I totally get that. The paid ones are really hard to find. So the fact that you got one is like,
Right,
it was gold, right?
right, exactly.
Especially in this industry. So you're either working on the school, at the school and doing it with the school, whatever it could be, or, if you can find one that's where there's real skills and you're not just getting coffee and bagels for people,
Exactly.
it's like, oh yeah, that is a real internship.
Right, yeah, and I think even, I was, at Business Channel for a month. I think I did learn a lot of skills, because I was doing audio engineering. It was like real hands-on, learning how to really network with people, and we went to a lot of networking events and stuff like that, and that was a lot of fun, and it grew a great bond, and that's why I think why we're still close today.
So, what do you predict the future of podcasting will look like within 5 to 10 years? I know we talked about your podcast a year from now. Do you have any predictions for 5 years from now with just the industry in general?
Like
Man,
sports podcasting. We'll deal with
Sports
that one.
podcasting, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think the arrow is definitely going up because I think a lot of people are getting into the podcasting game. I just hope they stick with it. I'm obviously relatively new to the podcasting industry, just under a year or, at the year mark. But I think it's going up. I think a lot of people are getting into it, and it's a cool medium too. Like if you can do it during, a pandemic at home through Zoom, I think you can do it, once the dust settles a little bit. So I think the arrow's definitely up. It's hard to say where exactly it's going to be in 5 to 10 years, but I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities. I mean, you can even see now if you jump on Indeed or LinkedIn or other job sites that you're going to see people are starting to hire for podcast hosts or pushing their brand, and I think that could increase even more in 5 to 10 years.
I agree. I agree. So if you were to bring an intern into your place, what would it look like for them? Because you were one and you would know how you would do it differently. What would it look like for somebody to intern with you?
Yeah, I think for me, I would want to create that experience where they're able to, get out of it, whatever they put into it and, help me with certain projects any way that I can help them, if they want to pick my brain about something, if they want me to be a guest or, anything like that, I would be, would want to help them, the way I've been helped in the past. As far as what they might be doing, I could use help, with social media. I do everything. I have someone that helps me with editing and, with graphics and everything. But as far as ideas and getting everything organized, I run Point, which I love, and I take a lot of pride in that. And I think it's a lot of fun, and you put your actual hands on it, which is why I like podcasting so much. But it never helps to have an extra set of hands, to do some social media or something else. But yeah, I would try to help them out as much as they're helping me out.
Gotcha. Best mentoring advice. Who's given it to you and what was it?
Best mentor, probably from Rich, just to like be authentic, be you. Like when you do your own show, you've heard other people talk about it before. Don't try to be somebody else. Don't try to be in another box. Just be you, be your own show, and people will eventually gravitate it. I think a lot of times, people try to create content just to create content. I believe in the philosophy it's better to create less content if it's quality, and naturally people will come to you. So I think be authentic, be yourself. I know that's harder than, it's easier said than done. But I think you just get started, be authentic, and just go for it, and you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So how can our listeners contact you? What do you have? I know you have a website, and do you have any other social channels and whatnot?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, you can go to my website, which is nickrodriguezpodcast.com, or you can go to all of our social media links, and we're on Facebook, which is the Nick Rodriguez Podcast, YouTube, the Nick Rodriguez Podcast, Twitter at InrodPod, and Instagram at Nick Rodriguez Podcast.
Just kind of curious, have you ever had your parents on?
No, and it has nothing to do, with them per se. It's just more of the fit of the actual show. They don't exactly fit with the show, but of course they're big fans, and they're supporting me all the way.
Yeah, that's good. I was just curious because I figured, maybe you and your dad were sitting there talking baseball or whatever, back and forth. What was it like back then and what is it like now? Compare,
Right.
Contrast.
Right.
That would be kind of a cool perspective.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, well, Nick, I want to tell you thank you so much for being a guest on the show. I've really enjoyed it. Big fan of it, of anything that is always sports related. I'm one of those sports fans, though, that actually likes to watch the people in the stadium,
Right.
probably, and the halftime shows more than watching the sports. But I do love the energy that comes
Right.
out of attending live sports. And I just don't think it's quite the same. Certainly, when you're doing it at home and watching it on TV, that's, one way. But man, being in the arena, that's everything. So I want to thank you again. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you guys so much for having me as a guest. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was so great conversating with you.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
so funny, Nick.
Exactly.
So funny, Ian. So funny.
Exactly.
The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Cat 5 Studios, who help you create games and videos for your training and marketing needs that are out of this world. Visit Cat 5 Studios for more information to learn how Cat 5 Studios can help your business. Thank you, Cat 5 Studios.